thanks for having me. I was the one that made the Go Aggies post when David put that up. I'm a Del Val grad, class of '93. Also did my graduate work at Virginia Tech, happened to be on no-till vegetables and using living mulches for weed control. So I know a lot about sustainability. I've done that for many years. Came to Rutgers, continued sustainable work. In fact, I was the New Jersey SARE coordinator. SARE is the Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program with USDA, and Sherry's on here, Dudas. Sherry actually has a SARE grant right now working with compost. Some of us attended that last week. She had an outreach component of her grant. So I do want to talk about the farming industry and what's going on right now, though. But I did want to give a little bit of background information about myself. And in the chat, I put some of our websites with Rutgers. And I want to thank Pete for the appreciation of telling you all about Rutgers Cooperative Extension and agricultural agents working directly with farmers. I've been doing this with Rutgers for 27 years. I come from a third-generation vegetable farm in Monmouth County, which now has gotten much smaller, and my uncle and cousins do turf and nursery because they were more profitable than vegetables. I married a fifth-generation fruit and vegetable farmer in Gloucester County. However, that farm is no longer as well because of the hurdles that farmers have to bear. So Pete put a lot of information out there, and actually Pete and I talk quite often with Farm Bureau. They're a great partner with Rutgers Cooperative Extension. And yeah, the post that I put on in the spring, it came the evening when we had a Gloucester County Board of Agriculture meeting, which is the local branch of New Jersey Farm Bureau. And one of our growers said, I just can't keep harvesting asparagus with the prices right now. The prices were depressed. It was around $20 a box, and it cost the farmer at the least $22 a box to produce a box of asparagus, with all the inputs, the cost of the box, and the great labor of hand harvesting, hand bunching that asparagus, and then transport to market. And that should not be. I mean, we should be able to make a living and have local asparagus for sale when we're in season, which is the months of late April, May, and a little bit into early June. However, with the world market and what it is today, Peru and Mexico were dumping asparagus in large volumes right here into our ports through the airlines. And that was predominantly what was on the store shelves. My husband and I often frequent a lot of different stores, and we kind of have a hobby of going into produce markets and seeing what's being shipped. You know, we just can't get the dirt from under our nails, being farmers growing up. And why wasn't New Jersey asparagus predominantly on the store shelves? Well, I'll tell you why. When New Jersey, and David brought this up, has H-2A workers that are making $15.54 an hour, and you have South American countries that pay $8.70 per day to their workers, we just can't compete with those costs. The labor costs just kill us here in New Jersey. There is no good federal guest worker program that helps the farmers out or puts us on an even playing field. And we even don't have an even playing field with other states in this country. We all know that the federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. And states like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and even Pennsylvania are still at that federal minimum wage. And here in New Jersey, we are not at that minimum wage. So when it comes to an even playing field, we're not even at an even playing field with other states in the United States when it comes to our labor costs for farming. And Pete brought up, you know, we talk a lot about fresh fruit and vegetables. That is all hand labor. So the only way that we are going to be sustaining farmers in the United States with fresh fruits and vegetables with all this labor cost is going to have an even playing field. And I'm not sure how we do that, but it's really a big detriment right now. You know, we have over 8 million people in this state of New Jersey, and we have about 10,300 farms, the statistics show right now. The average farm is about 71 acres per farm in New Jersey, but that goes from a small farm that might be an acre up to the largest farms that I know of and work with sometimes in South Jersey may be up to about 3,000 acres. Although those very large farms that are predominantly wholesale are disappearing very quickly. In fact, the largest fresh fruit and vegetable farm that I worked with in Gloucester County had a very sad farm sale last December. And yeah, again, a 5th generation farm no longer, because they couldn't compete with the wholesale market for out of country produce. Very, very sad to see that happen. It's really not sustaining our farms in New Jersey when we lose our large farms, because 8% of the farms in the United States and in New Jersey produce 80% of the crops that we eat. And Pete talked about buy local and buying from our farmers markets, and that is wonderful. And our farmers really stepped up during the pandemic, opened their farm markets early when we were closed down in March of 2020, helped out, kept farming. And that's great, because we need to sustain a local food system. But I would say we need to sustain a domestic food system as well. When it comes to us looking at energy costs right now, and you know, President Biden was just in the Middle East last week looking for foreign oil and asking for foreign oil. And that's great. You know, we have to balance domestic oil and foreign oil for our demands here in the United States. What happens someday when a president is making that trip to go ask for foreign food because our country can't sustain itself and feed our people? That's when we're really going to be in trouble. I've said that for years. I've been working in this industry and in this job for 27 years, and I've said this from day one. I'm fearful for what the next generation is going to be when we don't have the food to feed our own nation and we're begging other countries. As it stands right now, 50% of the fresh produce, fruits and vegetables are already imported into the United States. We don't have enough. And 70% of the fresh fruits and vegetables that we consume are grown in California and the Southwest, because the climates are good for growing there, as well as that's where our large family farms are. And I don't want to say the word corporate farms, because frankly, only about 1% of the farms in the United States are what we call corporate farms. Most of them, even though they're very, very large, are still what we call family farms with multi-generational family members running those farms. The one big fear, and if any of you have followed some of the news, one of the things that we're having happen in the United States is China is now buying up farmland. I don't know how that works. And Sherry, I see you shaking your head. That's a scary thing when, you know, China is moving into the United States, buying land, and we'll have Chinese companies producing our food. I think that the United States farmer is growing the most safest food for us to eat. I feel that they are doing it in a responsible way. Like I mentioned, even though we have very large farms in the West, Midwest, these are family farms. Yes, they have to make money, but they also want future generations to farm. So they're taking care of the land. And Pete brought up a good point. I don't know of anyone that isn't trying to do sustainable farming. Everyone I've worked with for years, I have all different, you know, measures of who's doing what for sustainability. But, and yes, I see Jeff, seeds and food are a national security issue, definitely. More so than anything that we really need to worry about. But again, I have farmers from different levels of sustainability, you know, whether they're totally certified organic, you know, some that are trying to be more sustainable. But through Cooperative Extension, through the SARE program, we've shown farmers that using things like soil building, organic matter, and you know, doing crop rotation or all different types of things, and Pete touched on some of those, is going to help us go into the future. And they already knew that. I had a grandfather that would grow peppers in the field, and then in the fall, to help protect those peppers from frost, they would hand broadcast rye seed and let the rye grow up into the pepper plants. That was a cover crop for them, but it also protected the pepper fruit when the rye grew up into the peppers for frost control. So things looking back into the past and looking into some of the things that our grandfathers did really were sustainable. And some of that is coming back now. It's like no-till and permaculture. But we can't abandon commercial modern agriculture either. I remember 25 years ago sitting on a SARE panel judging grants, and we were looking at a grant that came in to look at GPS units on tractors so that farmers can have straight rows and be more efficient in planting and having better plant populations in the field. And everyone was scratching their head and said, this will never work. We're never going to use GPS for tractors or for equipment. Well, 25 years later, we're looking at using robots to weed fields, and we're looking at, you know, all kinds of different technology and AI to help with agriculture production. And that's a good thing. We shouldn't be fearing technology. We shouldn't be fearing change. We should look back and see what worked and didn't work, but we also have to look to the future, because many of you have probably heard the statistic. By 2050, we're going to need to produce about 70% more food to feed the world's growing population. And we can't abandon technology or new ways of farming and having better yields to do that. So there's so much we got to look at. And, you know, many of us sitting around the room, I don't know about all of you, but, you know, my life's more than half over, and I have children and hopefully grandchildren someday. But that's what I fear for, is that we're not planning for the future, and we're certainly not planning for a domestic food source right now. One thing I did want to mention, and I appreciate the Assemblyman earlier tonight about having the depreciation bill. And Pete, you'll remember this, and Sherry, I think you'll remember this. Back in the mid-90s, we had a state program called the PEG grant system. It was the Production Efficiency Grant Program. And Sherry, you're shaking your head. That's just about when I started my career with Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and it was production efficiency grants gave funding to farmers to update their equipment to new energy efficient equipment. So the state co-shared the cost for the equipment, but the caveat was if the farmer got money for those new efficient equipment, whether it be a tractor, a irrigation pump, or drip irrigation systems, that they had to attend sustainability courses, like a recertification course for getting those funds. I would love to see that re-implemented. That was a wonderful program, I thought, when I first started my career in extension. It immensely helped some farmers get more efficient systems on their farms, whether it be coolers for refrigeration, or, like I said, tractors or other things. Heck, maybe in the future it would be a robot weeder so that they don't have to use as many herbicides. But I think that would be a great thing to bring back for efficiency in farming and helping farmers to meet some of the new things we're trying to do with green energy. Anyway, I've talked on and on. I'm sure you might have questions. Pete, I don't know if you have anything to add. Sherry, I know you're going to add some things, but thank you so much for having us tonight. I really enjoyed listening to everyone and continuing the meeting. Thank you.